testimony. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Camp.
Congressman Van Hollen of Maryland is now recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about averages of averages. In other words, average tax rates for average taxpayers over certain income levels. One of the ideas of trying to make this fair is to make sure that no individual taxpayer can take advantage of a lot of special preferences. And I would point out that the top 400 richest Americans, all making over $110 million per year and making an average of $271 million a year, paid only 18% of their income in income tax in 2008 effective rate. But what I really want to turn to is the larger conversation about tax expenditures that has been discussed by many tax experts for a long time, but has gotten more popular discussion as a result of Simpson-Bowles and some of the other commissions that have looked at this. And there are a number of ways to deal with the tax expenditure issue. One is to look them over and decide to eliminate them or a subset of them. That could be used to reduce the deficit, raise revenue, and also to buy down rates. Another way to do it is along the lines of one of the proposals the President made, which is for higher income earners, for example, at the 35% rate, you would say their deductions, regardless of what specific deduction it was, would get the 28% deduction level as opposed to 35%, so that higher income individuals weren't getting, a disproportionate benefit from the deduction. A third way, and this is what I want to focus on, is to not look at any particular deduction, but to find a way to limit the overall number of deductions. Then you don't have to necessarily get in a fight over whether this has an important social policy or another policy. One way that has been done in the past was something after former Congressman Don Pease, which is still an aspect of the tax code, which sort of phases out your deductions based on your income. And one of the concerns that have been raised by some people about that, including some of our Republican colleagues, is it changes indirectly your top marginal rates. But there's another way to go about this, and I want to explore that, and this is in the interest of searching for common ground. And Martin Feldstein, who was, of course, the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Reagan, has written about this. He's written about it in the Wall Street Journal, headline of the article, "The Tax Expenditure Solution to Our National Debt." Written about it in the Washington Post, headline, "How to Cut the Deficit Without Raising Taxes." And I do want to just read a portion of his article. It says, "There is a way to cut budget deficits without raising taxes. Tax expenditures are the special feature of the U.S. income tax law that subsidize a variety of things." And he says, with respect to the Bowles-Simpson proposals, their most extreme suggestion is to eliminate all tax expenditures, raising $1 trillion a year in tax revenue, and then use all but $80 billion of that to cut taxes. He goes on to comment, "I think that devotes too little money to deficit reduction at a time when fiscal deficits are dangerously large." And then he goes on to present another alternative, because as you pointed out, there may be tax expenditures that, whether for policy or political reasons, people aren't going to want to go after. So rather than picking one, he says, let's try and get at this overall issue. And here's his practical alternative, and I'm quoting, "Congress should cap the total benefit taxpayers can receive from the combined effect of different tax expenditures. The cap could be set as a percentage of an individual's adjusted gross income and perhaps subject to an absolute dollar amount." Mr. Question to you is, that approach, does it address the concerns some have raised with respect to the so-called Pease approach, in that the approach being presented by Martin Feldstein does not affect the top marginal rates or the marginal rates?
The short answer is yes. Do you want me to explain why?
Yes, if you could, because again, I'm offering this in the spirit of trying to find some common ground here.
By contrast, the Pease provision basically says, if you earn more income, I take more of your itemized deductions away. So that has the effect, as it's drafted, of increasing your marginal rate by 3%. So if you were otherwise in a 31% bracket, your effective marginal tax rate on earning additional income and if you're subject to the Pease provision, would be 31%. Now, what Professor Feldstein has proposed is a cap that's based against on adjusted gross income, and so as you earn more income, as your adjusted gross income goes up, the cap actually goes up. And so if the cap were binding on some taxpayers, the effect of the Feldstein proposal would be to, I earn an additional $100, well, that'll increase my allowable deductions by whatever the percentage cap is, so that I maybe even increase my deductions a little bit, which means my taxable income goes up by $100, or if the cap is binding, slightly less than $100. So that leaves the marginal tax rate either unchanged or in some cases will reduce it. Now, I too read the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece by Professor Feldstein, and he had proposed a cap of 2%.
Right.
Now, most of our states do have state income taxes, which are deductible against the federal income tax, and the state income taxes are generally at a rate above 2%. So the state income tax would generally go up and increase your itemized deductions, which means it's really sort of a wash. You wouldn't get that reduced marginal rate effect, but you'd be held constant.
At the federal level, you could actually have a reduction in your marginal tax rate.
Not if you're in a state with state income.
And I would just...
it would never increase the marginal rate.
Right.
It would only hold it constant or reduce.
Thank you. And I just urge my colleagues to take a look at this concept.
Now, the co-chair recognizes his co-chair, Senator Murray of Washington.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask your opinion about this notion that tax expenditures are just another form of government spending. I've heard Chairman of the Fed Reserve, former Chairman Alan Greenspan